The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Well. We are back again in the aftermath of the Montreal Canadiens. What was that? Their fourth regulation time loss of the season. The first time this year the Montreal Canadiens failed to score more than a single goal in a 5-1 loss to the LA Kings. Welcome to the live presentation. Happy lunch hour, everybody. Here we are on this Wednesday morning. There is Marco D'Amico. I am Shaun Starr. Marco, pleasure to see you again. Marco was in the building last night to watch that Montreal Canadiens second period collapse. Looks like this team, once again, has failed to put together a 60-minute performance. We've seen them fall apart in the third a little bit, and we've seen them fall apart in the second period. Last night, it was a case of just not being good enough against the oldest team in the National Hockey League. What was the vibe like in the building as the second period unfolded with some former Habs causing some damage on Sam Montembeault last night?
Impatience, I would say. It was definitely not good in terms of the overall performance. Obviously, Canadians leaving much to be desired when it came to their execution, missing a lot of passes. The timing was off. Trying to go. We talked about this on another episode, but trying to go for like the perfect shot instead of looking for the rebound or trying to find maybe a higher percentage shooting opportunity. I was looking to pick the corners, and in fact, some of those times backfired, causing counterattacks going the other way, and lengthy time in the offensive zone for the opposition. So it just didn't jive, in my honest opinion. They were just not there with their execution, and that's exactly what Martin St. Louis was kind of getting at in his post-game presser. But you have to give it to the LA Kings. They took advantage of, I would say, a 4-minute significant dip in performance from the Montreal Canadiens, and like a good veteran team, they took advantage, and then they shut the game down, and it was absolutely impossible for the Canadiens to get inside on them and try to play their game.
I'm glad you put it the way you did, right? I mean, Sam Montembeault taking a beating online last night, already in the comments from Canadian Waterfowler. How are we feeling about that .861 save percentage? Sam Montembeault, the goaltender of record yesterday, our pal Joe Boozer suggesting Montembeault needs to sit for a while. We'll get into the goaltending question that really has remained a question from the jump. And as often when we look at games and we look for the infamous TSN turning point in a hockey game, I can't help but wonder about the power play, especially as it unfolded in the game's first period with that 5-on-3 man advantage. In the hypothetical, in a world that doesn't exist, the what if world, what if Montreal had scored on that 5-on-3 and Josh Anderson still scores with under 50 seconds left to go? Just to go back to your take on the game where LA heavy, veteran-led, trap-wise, forcing the Canadiens into a position they couldn't overcome. I wonder, had they taken a 2-0 lead after 20 minutes, if that would have forced the LA Kings to open up to the Montreal Canadiens' credit. What do you think about looking back at that lack of success in the first on that 5-on-3 man advantage?
I think they were looking for the pretty play. Like if you look at the way that they went about executing that 5-on-3, they actually did a good job. Like there were many chances, but the execution just wasn't there. On any given night, they would have scored at least, on the first, second, or third opportunity. And one of the things that I really found interesting on that 5-on-3 is the fact that they had Noah Dobson there to be that point shot threat that we've been talking about on the power play. And it kind of allowed Lane Hutson to move around a little bit more. And this was all at the expense of Juraj Slafkovsky in that moment, right? And so I didn't necessarily dislike the way that it looked and the way that it acted, but I felt like the Canadiens immediately after that 5-on-3 lost confidence, didn't really play up to their levels. And then after that, it was just, they had 58 shot attempts. Mm-hmm. They only got 22 shots on goal. Yeah. I mean, when more than half of your shots either get blocked or miss the net, I mean, that's where the issue really comes to mind, right? Trying to pick corners on a goalie like Klemper rather than overload him, maybe getting shots to the pads, hoping for that rebound, like going back to basics, right?
Yeah.
And when you play a team like LA, you have to go back to basics. They're playing playoff defense. You got to play playoff offense. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to get the pretty play.
Well, it goes back, I think, to the inability for this youngest team in the NHL, right? I mean, that was the contrast of polar opposites. The oldest team on average against the youngest team on average clashing at the Bell Center, where, the LA Kings came in with a great road record. But Montreal, prior to last night, they were 5-1-1 at the Bell Center in the early blushes of the season. And that's it, right? That inability to, consistently put up a 60-minute effort. And I like your point about, playoff defense. On a night where I thought the bottom six guys brought a little bit more jam, they had more legs, a little bit more intensity. We saw Josh Anderson score a nice goal on a good, nice feed from Lane Hutson as he gets back on the point sheet after missing a couple of games. 100 career games for Lane Hutson and 75 assists. I mean, he's a special player. And, we were talking about this earlier on the TSN 690 morning show. I mean, there isn't a world where you can have it all. But if this young man had a shot, man, if he just had a shot, because sometimes I think that's one of the missing ingredients a little bit. I'm not talking to him specifically, but just to add another layer to the Canadiens' power play, that's again good. It's a good power play through the first few, 8 weeks or so of the season.
If Lane Hutson had a shot, he'd be Cale Makar.
Exactly. He took the words right out of my mouth.
I mean, without being disrespectful to Cale Makar, who is, in my opinion, and I don't say this often, a generational player.
Yeah.
So to me, he's right under there. He's going to be like with the, the Zach Werenskis, Adam Foxes, Quinn Hugheses of this world, where they're going to be the top echelon offensive defenseman of their generation if he continues to play the way he does and continues to improve the way he does, the way everyone projects him to. I think he'll be right there. But I think, and so it's one of the things that I've really kind of enjoyed from his game this year. And I know that we're talking about a 5-1 win. I was a little bit more critical in a 6-2 win against the Utah Mammoth. Well, I'm going to be a little positive here when it comes to Lane Hutson, even though it's a 5-1 loss to the LA Kings. He goes up the ice with the puck almost like he's a center. He has no fear going up the puck in the middle, being able to create open ice for his wingers. And you saw it on the Anderson goal, right? He took the puck up himself as if he were Jake Evans in that role, and he was the center, creates the space, opens up the pass over to Josh Anderson, and that was just a pinpoint accurate, probably his best shot of the season from Josh Anderson, and the Canadiens go up 1-0. So that, to me, that style of play and the way that Lane Hutson is just joining the rushes and being an implicate part of that rush is one of the things I've noticed that he's really kind of improved over from last season. Way more aggressive, and really kind of, a lot of people were saying he would get his points on the power play, get his points because he played so often with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and the top line. You're starting to see him get utilized in a very diverse way with different lines and still producing at a very high clip. So for me, again, just Lane Hutson continues to show that he's got extra layers to his game.
We've been talking about it off and on throughout the course of the Canadiens' first 16 games, right? When we look at their point percentage and the clip that they've been playing at, and you're never as high as your highest high, and obviously au contraire, right, with your lowest low and everything. But this is, in my opinion, it is a good team. They lack some consistency, as we've already elaborated on a little bit, whether it's depth, whether it's goaltending. having your legs on a regular basis, having a good counter punch when a team presents a different game plan than the one you originally thought you were in store for.
Yeah.
And you know, and a few things like last night, for example, the way you talk about LA and how they presented themselves and what's missing from this team. And you know, we're gonna have something tomorrow on the Buffalo Sabres and their big American forward and Tage Thompson and what's going on there and level of interest from the Montreal Canadiens. So, you know, you can look forward to that on the channel tomorrow. But what did we learn watching this Canadiens team yesterday? I mean, is it fair to say that troubling signs that when we look at the strength of schedule, it flattered them. And when they have to deal with whether it's more experience, deeper rosters, playoff bound teams, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. They're 1-4 against playoff teams from a year ago, 8 of their next 11 games coming up, and against Dallas, starting against Dallas that erased a 2-0 lead in Ottawa last night. 8 of their next 11 games are against teams that qualified for the playoffs. Like, buckle up. You know, here comes a little bit of a gauntlet here for the Canadiens.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, you talk about the quality of competition, then also look at the schedule and the frequency of games.
Right.
And so
Yep.
this is why I believe balance is key here, and being able to not over rely, right? So like when we were talking about this last week where they over relied on their fourth line. Well, what happens when your fourth line doesn't give you enough at 5-on-5? Well, then you rely back on other lines like the Kapanen line, or you look at Kirby Dach's line. But then, you know, they haven't played much. You haven't put them in positions of offense.
Yeah.
Then you throw them into this game, like for example last night, where the Kapanen line kept getting the extra shift while they skipped a few, and they were just getting boxed out by the Phil Deneau line or the Quinton Byfield line because they play a more structured, heavier game. And when I mean structured, go look at the way that Phil Deneau, who obviously didn't have any, wasn't an offensive juggernaut last night, but just the way he plays the center ice position is just so much more optimal and shows the experience that he has as a player because he was able to watch the play happen, attack it, break it, send it back the other way. And even when the puck was in his defensive zone, he played so low in the defensive zone, the Canadiens basically had no choice but to cycle the pucks along the boards, and then those pucks would get intercepted and they'd go back the other way. So the way that the centers impacted the transition and the defensive structure of the LA Kings, that's playoff hockey. Therein lies the importance of being strong down the middle. And I'm not saying they're an offensive juggernaut at center down the middle, though I really do like Quinton Byfield a lot. And I'm going to get in on Anze Kopitar because there was a nice fun story with him last night after the game. But you have Kopitar, Quinton Byfield, and Phil Deneau, 1, 2, 3. That, you know, outside of Quinton Byfield, who is, 23 now, these guys have been in the league for a while, especially Kopitar, Deneau. They have veterans, Adrian Kempe is there that has been around. And obviously their fourth line, like Joel Armia was playing on the top line. You had Corey Perry in there as well. This is a well-balanced forward line, not necessarily just for offense, but just to be able to play that kind of trap style where they can kill your offensive mojo. And if the Canadiens aren't playing rope-a-dope hockey, like if it's not going back and forth, they haven't shown the ability yet to be able to slow down the play and take advantage of their opponent at the same time. It's only one speed and it's only one style. And if you're going to have success against playoff teams in the playoffs as well, this is an adjustment organizationally, be it from the player selection, be it from the coaching strategy, that is going to need some tweaking.
Quinton Byfield, nice goal, nice little wave to the fans after he scored there. Add him to the list of Canadian killers. This guy's got 10 points, 3 goals in 6 games career against the Montreal Canadiens and was all over the place yesterday. Let me put Joey Gauthier up on the screen here for a second. Joey wonders what the solution is for Montreal's goaltending situation. It's a mixed bag for me, Sam Montembeault wasn't the reason the Montreal Canadiens lost that game. I mean, that was a team effort, losing 5-1. But if you, I would go 2. The Joel Edmondson goal to me stank. I didn't like it at all. whether it was a combination of losing a defensive zone draw cleanly. Jake Evans was there. Joe Veleno, commit to the shot block or just get out of the way. And look, I mean, that was from the top of the blue line, and there really wasn't much traffic in front of Montembeault there.
Well,
but a couple of things, there, like LA was going after Monty's glove hand, as a lot of teams do. You could see it.
Yeah.
And the Kevin Fiala goal obviously was gift wrapped, and
that's
a soft shot, and then a nice assist to Kevin Fiala. Not on Jaden Struble there. Jaden Struble wasn't expecting Fiala to get that gift wrap to his stick, but I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. Like, I go to Dobesh on Thursday. I would have gone to him anyway. Even if Montembeault had won last night, I would have gone to him anyway. But I'm ready to see a guy take control. I want to see a guy just like command the net. That's what I'm waiting to see.
I don't know that you're going to see that this season.
Maybe I don't disagree.
With all the back-to-backs, like, you need a tandem. We've been at this. Like, it hasn't looked that way because the Canadiens have had only 2 back-to-backs so far this season. In the next 3 weeks, I think they have 3. I have to go back and check.
Yeah, their next back-to-back is the 28th and 29th at Vegas at Colorado, and then December 2nd and December
3rd.
6-7.
6-7.
Yeah, 6-7. Way to go. Hey, we're on trend. So, I mean, that's a mammoth. They're playing 3 back-to-backs in a stretch of like 8 days here, man. That's crazy.
So you're going to need both goalies firing on all cylinders. The idea of having this number one is just going to take you to the moon. Like, guys, it's not going to happen. You need both. And when you look at what worries me the most is neither goalie has looked necessarily sharp in their last starts. Neither
Agreed.
of them. Right? And it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with the amount of high danger chances those goalies are facing.
Yeah.
And you look at you look at Dobesh's goals against, all high danger chances in the slot, right? Or deflections coming from point shots. It's the same thing with Montembeault. Like, it's all high danger areas, and a lot of these shots are avoidable, in my honest opinion. And the one from the point that Shaun was talking about was deflected off Veleno, right? And I initially thought it was a clean shot, and then I went back to look at it, and I was like, oh, well, the puck was supposed to be going lower, which he was ready for, and it ended up rising a little bit because it went off of him. You either have to, you have to commit to the shot block or get out of the way. And so, to me, again, part of it is the goaltender, but I don't feel like the Canadiens defensively have done their goalies any lick of favor. I would say at least in the last 10 games. And I think that's where I think from a defensive structure position, that's where we need to have more of a conversation from a team, because it's not just the defensive pairings, it's more the 5-man unit that I want to talk about.
Well, I kept thinking, watching the Canadiens, especially in that second period, reflecting to last week's game in New Jersey, I was in awe of the Devils' speed and transition game. I'm watching the Canadiens in their own end. I'm like, damn. I just reflecting back on how quickly New Jersey was able to, when they were ever in trouble, how quickly they managed to get out of that, right? And and I'm not one of these guys, and I think I could speak for Marco here. Like, I don't seek perfection; it's unattainable, So I'm never expecting someone to play a perfect game, but for a lot of different reasons, who they played against, where the Canadiens were at, fatigue wise, leg wise, they just had a bad game. They just had a bad game, and a team came in prepared to handle that speed and came prepared to play at the Bell Center. It's their one trip to Montreal. People like playing here. Yoel Armia had a nice little game, picking Lane Hutson's pocket there for the 4th goal. Joel Edmondson, former Habs, scores a goal. There's a lot that went into it. I'm not dumping on the Canadiens. It was just an off night across the board. So let's talk about what you just referenced there, that the sometimes breakdowns from the 5-man unit.
Yeah, well, breakdowns from the 5-man unit, to me, defensively, the Canadiens afford their opposition center of the ice way too easily when it comes to entering the zone. And that's a combination of the two things. Either the defensemen are playing too far apart, right, and trying to box out the pass, or the center is not playing low enough and getting caught up ice. And in both cases, that is more of a structural concern. Centers shouldn't be cheating too far into the offensive zone. They usually have to play a little higher in a high slot unless the puck is deep in and they're trying to assist and provide them an outlet for a pass to relieve pressure and continue the cycle game or whatnot. But you can't be cheating. You can't be so far into the offensive zone that when the puck goes back the other way, it's the two defensemen and maybe a winger that's back, as opposed to you being able to handle the center of the ice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that a lot of people look at the points when it comes to Kapanen and Doc and Evans, but this has been my main critique for a while now, especially when it comes to being able to defend a lead. The centers defensively are low, but when it comes to being able to counter point shots or counter the offensive flow of passing, everyone kind of buckles in. I don't know if you've noticed this. They all buckle into the slot and the teams just turn around them like sharks with the puck. Right. Yep. Whereas you're supposed to pressure them, right? So it's supposed to be 5 guys on the ice playing kind of like a pendulum where you go with the flow of the ice, but they were staying static. And so the Kings took advantage of that because they were moving the puck rather quickly, taking shots. It didn't matter if the shots weren't high percentage shots. They were just taking shots and seeing what happened. And that's exactly what the Canadiens did. I found early on in the season, like I found against Detroit, they were getting a pucks on net a lot. I found even the game against the Leafs, they were just taking shots and trying to see what was going on. Now it's almost like it's a too cute scenario.
Right.
And the same applies on defense, where it's like, it almost seems discombobulating. And you saw Martin St. Louis have kind of a moment with Jaden Struble where he kind of skipped the roti a little bit, and they were going with 4 or 5 defensemen for 4 or 5 straight shifts, where it was like Dobson playing with Hutson. It was Matheson playing with Carrier. It was Carrier back with Jackeye. And then Dobson Matheson came back on, and then Hutson was back on with Dobson. So like, there were messages being sent out yesterday that some of this is unacceptable. And I think, we can obviously talk about Struble. We could obviously talk about Juraj Slafkovsky getting his minutes clipped a little bit. But there is a level of frustration that I was alluding to from Martin St. Louis as early as this weekend, where, yes, the record is 9-3-1, now 9-4-1, but they're not really happy where the team's at right now.
Martin St. Louis had talked about, even when they had played well, he was aggravated, bothered by the lack of attention to detail in some of the games and some of the periods. And even prior to the game against Utah on Saturday, he had talked about how, he's evolving as the team is evolving. We're not talking about a Joe Quenneville experienced guy on an NHL bench coaching a team that came here, right? Like, let's also remember that he's learning too. And I appreciate someone that speaks honestly, that will admit that he's far from perfect, when he talked about how he gets caught up in a game sometimes, whether it's penalties or matchups, home ice, away, last change, whatever. And when asked about the context of line changes, line adjustments, and I liked what he said last night in his media availability. He gave guys minutes that to him were earning it. And, if you remember on Sunday, I was talking about, hey, I'm ready to see Demidov maybe on the first line, and as usual, the comment section lit up because the comment section is often very reactionary. Fans are going to fan, which I don't fault anybody for doing, but I like that Demidov brought some creativity. I like that he set up Kapanen early on, and that was a little bit of a difference for me. Darcy Kemper is what I want to see Sam Montembeault do, is make frickin' timely saves when he's called upon to make a timely stop on a regular basis. Kemper was doing that many times in the first period, whether it was Kapanen, whether it was Nick Suzuki on one-timers, freezing the puck whenever he had a chance to. But I like that Martin St. Louis didn't shy away from making those adjustments. And I like seeing that first line with Demidov and Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, even though, by the way, the Canadiens were skating at 11:30 this morning. And again, another therapy day for the Habs captain, Marco.
And Nick Suzuki out, but Cole Caulfield and Juraj Slafkovsky still on the top line. So it was purely experimental in that moment.
Yeah, a message.
A message sent. But again, I don't know if seeing him on camera was doing him justice to the level of annoyance or level of internal rage that was going on within Martin St. Louis. But like,
that's funny.
You can tell now, like, these players are like, there's a bag skate coming if this keeps up. Like, they're going to get absolutely just pushed out of their comfort zone, because I think the start of the season, everyone's kind of happy. You started seeing them get away from the good habits that got them to that hot start. Marquez and Lee kind of pointing that out early, even though they're winning. Like I remember the Philadelphia Flyers game. Like everyone's like, "Oh, well, he came back from a 3-0 deficit and got a point." He's like, "Yeah, but we had a 3-0 deficit. Like what? I'm not celebrating this point whatsoever. We need to be better. We need to continue to push. We need to be at another level if we're going to keep up in this division." So I really do enjoy the humility in his approach, because it's a detail-oriented sport. Like if you're committing more errors, if you're committing more mistakes, you're going to obviously expose yourself. So sure. I don't necessarily have a problem with his approach. I enjoyed the fact that Ivan Demidov got more minutes, but at that point I felt like the mojo from the team was just out of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a worthwhile question to look into. If they're willing to take Juraj Slafkovsky off that top line, then I'm sure Ivan Demidov would thrive there. It would just be a question of, and I think this would be really cool, but what of a Doc, Budzik, Slafkovsky line?
Yeah. Well, that's what I brought that up on Sunday, during
that's
our,
why
our live
I'm
show.
laying you up. I'm laying you up.
I go back to the chemistry before Doc's first injury around, the possibility of these two big boys going. I like Doc's game again, despite the phantom call there along the half wall. And even the high stick, I think hit Quinton. Did the puck hit Byfield behind the net there? And I mean, you see two sticks go up and the referee calls it, it is what it is. But I don't mind at this stage, 16 games in the books, that you try something fresh. I am not scared, because I've seen Juraj Slafkovsky, who had a bad day at the office yesterday, and the Canadiens committed 18 giveaways in that hockey game yesterday. They were forced into a lot of bad spots. They were, I thought, very predictable with their puck management, and maybe that's credit to LA that forced them into those poor decisions. But I think I've seen enough, Marco, where I'm good. If I don't think there's hurt feelings in the hypothetical world that may exist and turn into reality Thursday, that maybe Slafkovsky has a couple of different line mates, and the same goes for Demidov. What do you think about the possibility of a different lineup card being filled out against the Stars tomorrow night?
Well, I always say this when it comes to projecting lines at the beginning of a season. It's always the opening night roster projections that I give, because lines are going to change. They're obviously always going to change. And as this team gets deeper and with more talent, the combinations are consistently going to change. Like it's the same thing that happens. You go and look at Vegas. They change their lines constantly, right? It's not always the same necessarily. Now, obviously, you go and get a key piece like Mitch Marner. Well, you're going to keep him basically tied to Jack Eichel. So the combination of Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield is basically the same. Who completes that line is what differs.
Right.
And so everything from there then becomes a trickle-down effect. So I'm totally okay with them trying to work out some chemistry, see if they can create more consistency and not simply just focus on a top-heavy first line with some possible secondary scoring, but maybe like maybe a more dynamic top line and then some jam secondary scoring. And I think maybe that strategy may click. I've said it before and I've said it again, that it be Demidov or Slafkovsky. Someone had to get on that dock line on the right wing. As much as I've appreciated Brendan Gallagher, I think his role at this stage of his career is better suited for the bottom six.
Agreed.
And I don't think that in terms of offensive production, he was necessarily helping that line. And so I think maybe having a younger leg, a little bit more talent, maybe a bit more size in Slafkovsky's case, kind of may help drive more offense. So I'd be interested to see, because really the Canadiens haven't had long stretches of Slafkovsky away from the top line to truly evaluate what he is as a player. Like down the line, Demidov, it projects as your franchise winger. Are you really going to play your franchise winger on the second line
without a legitimate centerman?
And that's another thing. Guys in the fans in the comments last week. Kapanen is the second line center of the future. Kirby Dach is the second line center of the future. Well, if the Canadiens truly believe that, they wouldn't be calling teams to ask them about what's going on with their centers right now.
I think very happy.
They're very happy with the progression, because seeing progression is always a benefit. But
Mm-hmm.
when you play teams with actual mature center depth in the NHL, those kinds of players get exposed. And that's
Yeah.
exactly, unfortunately, what we saw last night. The game, in my 2 cents, the game last night was lost down the middle.
Yep. I think that's well said. And that is probably a better way of expressing how I felt about someone, let's say like Nazem Kadri, for example. And
Yeah.
reports around that Carolina's big game hunting, as they're often speculated to be, and who knows if Kadri is inclined with Carolina, but Carolina apparently is poking around. So I just I'm a big believer, and it's funny too because you'll get some fans in this market, no, too old about whatever player. But when Corey Perry was here and you learned about Corey Perry's good habits and how much Cole Caulfield loved him, oh, I love Corey Perry. And then Sean Monahan came here and you're like, oh, look at this broken down toaster. Oh, and then he's healthy and he's scoring. Oh, I love Sean Monahan now. Let's be honest here. Like,
did you
good
just
veterans,
call Sean Monahan a broken toaster?
Good veterans on a young team that bring value, that buy in. These are valuable players to have,
Point fair analogy was amazing. I think the difference is that you named all of those players. What was the acquisition cost of those players? In some cases, the Canadiens got paid to take on those players.
Correct. Yes.
So I think that's the issue. Would anybody take Nazem Kadri?
That's a
Would
great
anybody
point.
say no to having Nazem Kadri for free? Of course not. And if they do, I don't think it's necessarily a logical take. I think it may be more of an emotional take.
Yeah.
But when it comes to it's the acquisition cost versus the amount of time that he would be the kind of center he is today in his later stages of his career. I think that's the risk. That's why people are a little bit less inclined for Nazem Kadri. But if a bigger name, and this is where, like, to be clear, like, we'll get into this, but this is why the Canadiens are willing to overpay to fill this position if a top-end option becomes available. Because the Canadiens are not in a stage at this point in their rebuild where they could hope that one of Doc or Kapanen become the number 2 seed. They can hope that they become good enough to be a high-value player at that position or be a stopgap until they find a long-term solution. But in the Montreal Canadiens management team, there is no confusion. They know they need a 2C. Everyone knows they need a 2C.
Exactly.
And frankly, and this is what I'm going to say, the only thing that watching guys like Kapanen and Doc do well, the main thing that it affords them is time. It makes them less desperate to have to make a trade. Like, for example, a Vancouver Canucks, or for example, a Detroit Red Wings, or for example, the Florida Panthers, who are going to be without Barkov for the year, or the Washington Capitals, who are going to be without Pierre-Luc Dubois for 3 to 4 months at the minimum, right? Yep. So those are teams that, if they want to stay in it and have things that, they have a timeline that they have to reach because certain players aren't going to be around too long. I'm talking, like Ovechkin potentially in Washington. Well, they have a little bit more urgency than the Canadiens. So having these young guys do well, and they have done well, but they don't view them as the solution. It's hopium to hope that these guys will be the solution. And I think a game like last night exposes that. And it's okay. If Oliver Kapanen, who was drafted with, I believe, the last pick in the second round of the 2021 NHL draft, ends up being a high-end third-line center or a stopgap 2C that you could put in there if there are injuries, then you won that pick time and time over. Teams pay first-round picks for stuff like that.
You're
so there's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to have guys that are just good at their position. You want to have high value at those positions. So if he's a high-end third-line center, that's excellent at the rank that he was taken at. And he's showed signs that he is on track to be able to do that and then some. So that is all beneficial for Montreal. The real crux of the question is, how far can Kirby Dach go? Because I think we all agree, Kapanen is going to continue to get better, and his defensive game is going to make him a staple on the Canadiens because he's winning faceoffs. I mean, last night wasn't necessarily good, but in general, he's been very good in the faceoff circle. And so I believe, couple that with his defense and his growing offense and his shooting ability, this is a guy that can stick around for a while. And then they have to figure out what they have with Kirby Dach.
I wonder about that. I found it interesting when Ken Hughes was spotted in Toronto for a brief little GM's meeting in the Big Smoke, and was asked, obviously, hey, Ken, what do you think about your team? Your team's doing pretty well at the time. They were, at the top of the table in the NHL's Eastern Conference. The Boston Bruins, they won a big game last night as the Toronto Maple Leafs lost the game. They lost Austin Matthews. Stolars
Anthony
left.
Stolars.
Stolars left in the first with an upper body injury. Matthews with a lower body injury. Ottawa lost Thomas Chabot to an injury in that come from behind win by the Dallas Stars yesterday. And Ken Hughes was asked about, hey, what's going on with your team? You feeling good? And what stuck out to me was him admitting that he and his colleagues in the front office did not see this team being this good this early. And so, he's been very consistent, Marco, talking about how, they're not going to mortgage this. They're not going to, put the cart before the horse and all of these things.
Yep,
so absolutely. I wonder, like, when we talk about big game hunting, my Jets got cooled yesterday thinking about Ken Hughes and the expectations and, maybe not being so reactionary to a team that has 10 wins in 16 games, saying, you know what, let the season unfold. We're not trading Ryan Backer. We're not trading a first tomorrow for a Ryan O'Reilly or, just pick a name out of a hat somewhere. You know what I mean? I kind of got cooled down after listening to the GM.
Yeah, as you should. I think we talked about this again. Kapanen and Dach performing the way that they have of late affords the Canadiens time. Like, I'll give you a direct example about this, okay? Noah Dobson. The Canadiens knew they wanted to improve the right side of their defense, okay? So last year, at the trade, right before the trade deadline, the Canadiens fielded a call over to Lula Moriello and the New York Islanders and were like, hey, he's an RFA in the making. 1 year left of RFA status. He's got arbitration. What's your plan with him? Are you going to extend him? Are you, because we like him? What's the plan? Moriello at the time said, we're not trading him. We want to sign him. It's like, okay, thank you. Have a good one. And then the moment he was made available by the New York Islanders 2 days before the draft, the Canadiens caught wind of that, speed dialed Matthew Darche, jumped ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets with an offer, and then got the deal done with Noah Dobson from a contract perspective. All this happened within 36 hours. And then boom, right? That's what I expect the Canadiens to do. The Canadiens are not, they don't come off as a panic trade organization.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I don't think that the pressure is there yet for them to have to overpay. Like, for example, the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks are trying to do two things: stay competitive, convince Quinn Hughes to stay. So they are all chips on the table at this point with Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, where they absolutely need to make a trade like that, right? Detroit, same thing with Steve Yzerman. They better make the playoffs this year, and they better go on a little bit of a run because they're running out of patience in Detroit. It's the Yzer plan has been going on for almost 8 years now, 7 years.
Yep.
So it's time to get her moving. And so that's the idea right now with them, is they are not even close to that. The team is performing higher than expected. There's going to be a course correction. We've already talked about this. So they have a general idea of where they believe their team should be come Christmas time, which is in the thick of it, second, third seed in the Atlantic, or a wild card seed, depending on how teams rebound over the next month. And then we see who grows, who doesn't, who stagnates, and you see where the trade market. That's why they're fielding calls and trying to just see what teams are planning on doing so that they have the information ready to make a move if they need to make a move. And they felt like this summer they needed to do that at right D. And so they called the Calgary Flames to see what was going on with Rasmus Andersson. They called the LA Kings to see what was going on with their defensemen. They called a bunch of teams to see what was going on with their right shot defenseman, because they identified that position as a weakness along with center that they needed to go ahead and fill. And so this is the same thing. They have all the time in the world to wait this out, all the time in the world. And even if they start to dip and they lose 4 or 5 games, there's no panic trade coming here. There is none. Because the cost of acquisition for a center right now, and there are none available at this very moment, the cost of acquisition would be astronomical.
Crazy, yes. Well, that's why I'll put this comment up from Surf this morning. The Canadiens are the youngest team in the league. Relax. This team needs more time before they become actual cup contenders. Hughes understands that. He'll be patient. Hopefully, Habs Nation gets it. And that, the word hope, as Red taught us in the
Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption, is a very, very dangerous word. And Habs fans, listen, fans are going to fan. It's your right. It's a democratic world. I'm never going to tell a fan how to fan, but they see an exciting brand of hockey. They see a team with a 733 point percentage clip prior to last night and 10 wins, and Cole Caulfield and Demidov and Kapanen and Dobesh and Nick Suzuki, Olympics, tied for goals, tied for rookie points, leading in rookie scoring. I get how all of that adds up to grandiose expectations. I understand that totally.
But there's something to be said about sample size and the timing of that sample size.
Yeah, look at the way that the LA,
yeah. No, but look at the way that the Canadiens played last night against a team that is literally wired for playoff hockey.
Yeah.
Right? Like the issue with the LA Kings is if they get into the playoffs and they don't play the Edmonton Oilers, anything could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem is they always play the Oilers.
That's right.
So like they have the structure to be able to play. They're a non-exciting team that has players that understand what they need to do in order to win those kind of tight, boring games. And that's their bread and butter, are their tight, boring games. Exciting hockey does unfortunately not win championships. It doesn't. And it sucks that that's the case. But it takes generational level of talent of exciting hockey to be able to win titles. You look at, the Colorado Avalanche. You can make the argument for the Tampa Bay Lightning with Kucherov, right? You can make the argument with the Oilers having both McDavid and Draisaitl. And without those two, the style that they play, they wouldn't even sniff a Western Conference final. So it speaks to that. And I feel like the Canadiens are going to have to be in the middle of that. They're going to have to wait to see what Ivan Demidov develops into, because if he becomes a franchise player, which we project him to be, well, then that changes the offensive dynamic, the way the Canadiens can play in that kind of scenario. But in LA, or against a team like LA, or one of the heavier teams out west, like you look at the LA Kings, you look at the teams of past, like the older Nashville Predators, the older San Jose Sharks. Remember those teams? Those were the kinds of teams that would, be able to play against the Canadiens and kind of toss them to the side, because the structure is elite, and the way that they go about taking advantage of opportunity is elite. And I think those are playoff qualities. That comes with experience, that comes with maturity. And that's really what this Canadiens core is missing at this point, because they have mostly every single other piece except for that bona fide 2C, which is fine. They'll get there. They'll eventually get there. And I agree with fans. And I'll say this one last time. The Canadiens are not in a rush to get a 2C in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. But you best believe, and I will state this because we'll have a conversation about this tomorrow, but you best believe that Kent Hughes is playing poker, and he is getting all the information from his rivals possible, calling them to see what's going on with this center, what's going on with that center, what's going on with this guy, what's your plan for that guy.
That's
because just like Dobson, they had a list of players that they really liked, and if one of them became available, they were ready. They had the assets, they had the cap space, and they were ready to come in, swoop in, pay the price, and get the guy that they feel they need to finish the puzzle.
Well, let's go the whole way with the poker analogy then. Like if you're sitting on the button after the cards have been dealt and you're the last to act before it's your turn here, I mean, you're allowed to watch everybody else's reaction. What are they doing? What are their behaviors? What's their mood like? What's their attitude like? And, one of the things I've always liked about the decision to hire Kent Hughes is that he comes from the pro agent shark world. This guy is now living both sides of the executive environment, how players behave, what players look for, what players' value are, and now acting as a general manager. So I kind of agree that they're really, you're not overreacting to a 5-1 loss. The Canadiens will be back in action tomorrow against the Dallas Stars. They were in Ottawa last night, down 2-0. They leave on a Rupe Hintz overtime winner in a 3-2 decision. Chris and NDG. And Dallas is a legitimate Stanley Cup contending team. So we're going to see full value here on Thursday.
But, like it.
Here's an interesting topic. Joe Veleno, the new whipping boy, has been for a little bit here. Chris and NDG's contention that he needs a break. Joe Veleno needs a break. And the issue, I guess, is like, fine, you're going to replace Joe Veleno, but with who? Like, I don't even think, as much as I like Jared Davidson's 9 goals, like, for a team that plays up tempo, fast paced hockey, I don't think Jared Davidson is the answer. No disrespect to the player, but like, there's no Marco. What's the alternative here? If Martin St. Louis goes to Ken Hughes, like, man, I got to keep playing this guy. He's hurting me more than he's helping me, which I don't think is true. I mean, we're not looking at a vast amount of options here.
No, and offensively in Laval, I mean, it's not been very peachy outside of him, right? Like, you look offensively at the way the team, like, right, the team's playing right now in a morning game against the Springfield Thunderbirds and are down 2-1.
Were they down 1-0? Okay.
2-1. And Laval has 18 shots with 7 minutes left in the game. So almost a mirror image to the Canadiens. And, what do you gain from taking Joe Veleno out of the lineup? That's what I get. Like, do I think that Jared Davidson deserves a call-up? Absolutely. Do I think that Jared Davidson would be better than Joe Veleno in his role? Yes. But we're talking about a fourth-line winger.
Correct.
I think the issue is not the fourth line in and of itself. Maybe it's the amount that the fourth line is used. Maybe it's the way that the lines are developed. Maybe it's the way that certain players are being asked to play roles that they're maybe not ready for. Maybe it's just running into good teams. But at the end of the day, because Martin St. Louis is going to tell you, it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, these are the growing pains that this team is going to have to go through.
Well
because
said.
Now teams see them coming. You don't magically get to the top of an Atlantic division and don't expect veteran teams like the LA Kings to absolutely video the hell out of you and be ready to take advantage of your every mistake, because teams take notice. You're at the top of the division. They're like, oh, that's a team we got to be careful about. And I'm telling you right now, I spoke to players around the Kings yesterday, and they said that they were ready for the Canadiens because they had heard a lot of good things and seen a lot of good things.
Sure.
And they took this game seriously.
Well, yeah.
So
and
that's a credit to the Canadiens in the sense that they have a good thing going, but they're going to need to surpass themselves, and they're going to need to grow from these kinds of from this kind of adversity if they hope to become a contender one day. Because yes, we could harp on this show and on many other shows about how a 2C would be a magical solution to all their problems. But if they put in the effort that they put in last night and they play with the execution level that they played last night, they'd still lose the game.
Well, and that's, when Matthew Blackman writes, what do you have to lose by taking Veleno out of the lineup? Like, so it's basically another first line player from the farm team that's going to come play a handful of minutes on the fourth line, and he's going to be expected to score right away. I mean, that's the rub. Like, and we're talking about the youngest team in the National Hockey League that will now get even younger and even less experienced. I mean, how many players have you seen? And I also don't buy the line of you play well in Laval, you get rewarded. The Montreal Canadiens have a ton of chairs that are already occupied. This is not an audition team. This is not the same squad from a couple of years ago, in my opinion, where you're like, okay, we're probably going to finish at the bottom of the standing, so there's lots of chairs open. Who's going to grab one? It's not the same. This is a competitive club. This is a club that, in my opinion, is very much playoff bound. So I feel that as far as American Hockey League players, in my opinion, I don't have a lot of appetite for experimentation and finding first-line guys in Laval with 9 goals and then coming here. And listen, I mean, it's not like Jared Davidson, Marco, was a 30th overall pick. No disrespect. The guy is a 5th-round guy, and he's having a nice moment in Laval, but I hate to break it to you, he's not the answer to what hurt the Montreal Canadiens yesterday.
No. He would be a nice boost for a line that I know they scored last night, but they have 3 goals, 2 of which at 5-on-5.
Yeah,
that fourth line this season. So where I would say I would understand fans is perhaps having a Jared Davidson changes the complexion of that line, makes them more physical, and that provides more energy to the lineup, and there's a little bit more of a scoring threat because I think that Jared Davidson is a better shooter than Joe Veleno.
Yeah.
And so I understand the frustration there.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I think personally it's more of a strategy and execution scenario. I think Ivan Demidov needs to play more than 13 minutes a game. I think it's as simple as that. You need to start using an offensive line like your second line and not using your fourth line like a second line, because last year it may have worked for you when Christian Dvorak was here, but he ain't here no more.
Yeah.
He's in Philly doing quite well. So you got to now change it up, especially at home when you have the last change. You could afford to do that. I understand the excuse on the road, but you could afford to do that at home. So giving Demidov more time to be offensively creative, spark something. Don't be afraid that he's going to hurt you defensively, because
Fair.
right now the issue is you're looking for goals.
Fair.
Right?
And like no forward yesterday, for what it's worth, no forward on the Canadiens got more time on the power play than Demidov did, which is a step in the right direction.
On the power play. Cool.
Well, yeah, on the power play. Like, he's 19 years old. He's not going to be a 5-on-5 minute eating machine, but in my opinion, you're putting him in a better position to find success. That's all. It's coach recognizing, it's a positive development.
You're playing on, well, first of all, being on the first power play, step one.
Yes.
But the idea, or at least the analysis to be made here is, why simply on special teams? Right?
Well, you're picking your spots.
If you look at the way that Demidov has played at even strength, the way that his line has produced offense at even strength, they are more than worthy at this point of being able to get more minutes.
Yeah.
Right? And we saw the fourth line, the Jake Evans line, get caved in last night, time and time again. Right? And just, and I'm not to harp on these guys individually, but Josh Anderson, in terms of man-to-man coverage in his own end last night, was just like, he wasn't skating. He was just stationary at the left circle, waiting for the puck to cycle to him so he would stop it. When you're a freight train, use your speed. You're supposed to be able to move like that. Whereas if the Kapanen, Demidov, Newhook line did that, well, they'd be skipped on the next rotation, right? So this is the kind of stuff that Martin St. Louis said he's going to have to get better at. And I'm willing to give him all the time in the world to have him improve, because this is an individual that anything he's done in life, he's always found a way to improve upon. So, is it fair to point out that this is a discrepancy or an idiosyncrasy in his usual, methodology in coaching? Yes. But at the same time, give the coach the time to be able to rectify that, because to me, you cannot have an Ivan Demidov at this point and hold him back thinking that the club's shooting percentage was going to maintain the way it was going from the start of the season. They were going to run into teams like this. They were going to run into hotter goaltenders than what they faced last week, which was like the opposite of hot. So, at this point, Demidov probably deserves more minutes at 5-on-5. Newhook deserves more minutes in 5-on-5. And due to his defensive acumen, I think it's fair to say that Kapanen should be playing more with them. So I have no problem with that. Or you jig up the lines entirely and you try and see if you can get new combinations that are going to spark offense. Those are basically the two options at hand.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where your level of optimism is, and I don't want to overreact too dramatically to one game and the 5-1 loss, but spit out this number again. 8 of their next 11 opponents are against playoff-bound teams from a year ago. And, it's a tough schedule, man. Dallas, Boston, at Columbus, and then it's Washington, Toronto, Utah, Vegas, Colorado, Ottawa, Winnipeg, Toronto, St. Louis, Tampa Bay. I mean, and there is a bleep ton of back-to-back games coming up, Marco. I mean, this is where I think, I bring up the word opportunity again. In the month of October, with a spaced out schedule. A few weeks ago, they more or less had a week off when they came back from a road trip. That was the one time they were going to get a significant break in the lineup, an opportunity to stockpile points, try different people in different roles, because, I mean, it's time to lock in. It's time to lock in. If this team is to be taken seriously here, they're going through a hell of a run coming up, and it started last night, and it rolls against a legitimate Stanley Cup contending team in the Dallas Starr. So where are you at with that in terms of, start with the goaltending? I mean, I know you mentioned the word platoon earlier on, towards the beginning part of this, right? But got to see someone take charge here. Got to see someone make some lock. I mean, I don't mean take charges and they're going to play 75% of the games, but when they're in, man, their game is on point. They're sharp. They're tracking pucks. And And the only way to do that, right? I mean, you got to get reps. You got to get in there time and time again and fine tune that game.
I don't know about that. I think that if there's a reason why whenever I look at goaltender statistics in a season, I always move up the games played filter, because it's easy to be a backup goaltender, play 4-5 games in a 20-game period and have better stats than the number one goalie who's being asked to play 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's also load management involved. There's plenty of other factors. So would I like to see a goaltender take charge? Yes. I think in a perfect world, you'd like to see both goaltenders be at just an above adequate level, and that the team in front of them is the one that's really driving, the bus. And I think that therein lies the difference. I feel like also in Montreal, there's a higher level of scrutiny on a goalie than in other markets. Because we've been spoiled in Montreal with the amount of goalies that have come through the Montreal Canadiens organization.
Yeah.
So I always take that into consideration when I'm watching, right? I think, you talk about making timely saves. I don't think the Montreal Canadiens win 6-2 against the Utah Mammoth without timely saves from Samuel Montembeault in the second and third period. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, it finished 6-2. If the game got out of hand in the later stages of the third period.
I get it.
Prior to that,
game, though. It's one game.
Exactly. And so this is why I say consistency. Right?
I thought he had two posts. He got beat cleanly twice in the first period. He had 2 posts.
So did Kemper. I don't think anybody's talking about that in LA right now. Why? Because the team in front of him played really, really well. And I'll give Kemper his flowers. Like 1 goal and 22 shots, yes. But one of the main reasons the Canadiens got so few shots on him is because they kept trying to get the pretty shots, didn't really actually put him to work in terms of making him move, right? Lower shots in more of the 6 or 7 hole region, trying to get him under the arm instead of above the shoulder. Like, to me, it was all in execution. It was all in strategy of shot. We talked about this with Cole Caulfield. What made Cole Caulfield a better goal scorer this year so far this season was because he wasn't trying the perfect shot like everybody was trying last night. He was trying lower shots or trying to catch the goalie cheating or trying to overwhelm the goalie or make the goalie guess. They didn't do that last night. And that was, to me, the biggest thing, because the Canadiens had the opportunities to be in this game. Absolutely had the opportunities, and then it got away from them. But, if this game could have been 2-0, 3-0 by the end of the first period, if the Canadiens were a little bit more opportunistic or a little bit more lucky, and we wouldn't be talking about the same thing. But that's game management, situational game management. That comes with maturity, and that comes with strategy.
Yeah, score on that 5-on-3. Score on that 5-on-3. Anderson scores. Maybe it's 2-0. Maybe they get away from that trap system they do so well, and got Montreal into those perimeter type situations where they were telegraphing, what their move was going to be when they had the puck. And then, they didn't really help out their own teammates, especially in their own end yesterday. And the end result is the goalie getting pulled with 4 minutes left, and it's a 5-1 final,
Yeah. We have a couple of minutes left, so I'll ask you this hot one. You tell me what you think now after a week since we talked about this.
Yeah.
Caden Gooley is skating.
Yeah.
Who do you take out if he comes back before the trip?
That's you know what? I have a different answer. It's Jaden Struble. I have a different answer.
As much as I like Jaden Struble, unfortunately I have to agree. And judging by the way that Martin St. Louis used his defensive pairs last night, I think he might agree too.
Well, you go back to camp, right? I mean, they had set the table for Arbor Jackeye to win that job, to be that guy. And the season got off how it started, and he got into a little bit of difficult spots. He put himself in a few difficult spots that probably were frustrating for the coach, but I watch him with a detailed eye. And for me, it's 5 games now where I see steady improvement. He fired the puck a couple of times. I like that he's standing tall at the blue line, at least keeping it in, not backing up too much towards his own goaltender. For the most part, he's playing a disciplined game, and he brings a physical element that I think is very much needed here. And so that's how I kind of land on that question. I mean, it's a money question. I mean, what are we talking about? Goulie's what? Inside 2 weeks from returning? What are we talking about here? You know,
I
like,
am
he's right
done
there.
trying to project health returns with the Montreal Canadiens.
You know, but I mean, just
No,
going on the timeline, I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm just, just on the timeline, it was 4 to 6 weeks and we're getting close.
Even the timeline. Yeah, David Reinbacher was supposed to come back in 4 weeks. He came back with 4 weeks and 3 days, and those 3 days were insufferable. So I'm not getting into this anymore. I expect him back before the end of the month. That's my 2 cents. I expect him back. I wouldn't be surprised if he was on the road trip when they go to Salt Lake, when they go to Colorado, and when they go to Vegas.
Yeah. And I wonder on that front, like we'll end on this thought here. Make sure you lock it into the channel tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens poking around, and we'll get into details on that a little bit. But what kind of value Jaden Struble, hypothetically, how do you think the rest of the GMs in the league look at this young man?
Well, I could definitely tell you that there's definitely one team in the Canadiens division that thinks that he's a pretty good player.
Okay.
I can't really go into detail because I've been sworn to secrecy on it. But for those that think that Arbor Jackeye or Jaden Struble have no value, or just random seventh number 7 defenseman or number 6 defenseman, there are a lot of teams in the league that would be willing to give him a flyer.
Yeah, I think I have an educated guess, but we'll save that for another day. All right, final thoughts there?
Final thoughts. I mean, guys, I think it's turn the page and get ready for the next game. The Dallas Stars are kind of like in the same situation the Montreal Canadiens are right now. Like a lot of hype, but not necessarily playing to the level that fans in Dallas think that they can play. And so to me, it's going to be a really good barometer test tomorrow as to which team can really get up. And they did really well that game against Ottawa where they came back and won in overtime. But it's like the Canadiens, right? You come back and you win in overtime, but then the next game you got to go back up again, and you got to think to yourself, like, if they don't score the first goal, like, what's the psyche going to be? And I think that's where the Canadiens are going to try to strike as well, try to come out flying in the first period after a lackluster performance versus the Kings.
The Boston Bruins, they're just not going away. They got 22 points. They played 2 more games than the Canadiens have, but man, oh man, they've won 3 in a row. The Leafs and Sabres at the bottom of the division have lost 3 in a row, respectively. And interesting to see what happens here. Pittsburgh Penguins aren't going away. The Bruins aren't going away just yet, but we're still 16 to 18 games in, depending which team you follow here. So game number 17 tomorrow night from the Bell Center against the Dallas Stars should be a fun one. Lots of star power on both sides to watch out for. Should be an entertaining game. And as always, D'Amico and Starr will be here with you Friday morning live to recap that game. In between, make sure you like and subscribe. We've got Friday some fun. What's that?
Friday at noon.
Friday at noon works for me. But yeah, we've got, we're going to have an updated look at the NHL trade market landscape. Not directly connected to the Canadiens, but as we get closer to the 20-game mark, what's going on a little bit? Nashville seems to be the one team making some separation, in terms of being a bottom-feeding team and what's going on there, and what's going on with the miserable Sabres and all of these things. The Calgary Flames, are they positioning themselves here? What are they up to? San Jose Sharks, and down the list we go. So we've got a lot to get to. And make sure tomorrow we have an interesting bit to follow up on Marco D'Amico's piece with RG Media around the Buffalo Sabres. So that's going to drop tomorrow morning. So lots and lots of reasons to like and subscribe to this channel for daily Montreal Canadiens and NHL content right here on the Starr and D'Amico Show. Marco, thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure, guys. You have a great one.